Hello and welcome to the COYFCast for a very, very, very special episode. A little bit different for us. You will be listening to this, we hope. If you are listening to this, it means it's worked. On launch day of the Castleford Tigers away kit for 2024. Via the power of time travel, we are a few weeks behind you. Thanks to the good people at Cass, we were a little bit cheeky. We sent a message and we thought, could we do something for the club? Could do something for us as well? Could we get a little sneak peek at the kit in order to create this podcast for you on launch day, so you can listen to our thoughts on the kit straight off the bat? Hopefully, we've put this out right on the announcement. So, what you're about to hear in the first section of this podcast, it's going to be a fair bit longer because we've got Steve McNichol from Cast Rugby Shirts on the show later on, which we're really excited for. But this first section, it's just me and Adam. Adam's here too. Say hello, Adam.
Hello.
He's here as well. You're about to hear our very first genuine reaction to this away kick because we've not seen it yet.
No.
We're about to see it. I'm about to press a button and we're about to see it. And yeah, no idea. So, are you ready, Adam?
Oh, absolutely. For the lovely people at home that can't see what we're looking at, Ross has currently got his WhatsApp open,
Yeah,
screen sharing. He's
this
hovering
is
over the chat.
pure technology. Here we go. All right, first glance.
Ooh,
It's something, isn't it?
definitely something. That's interesting. I quite
Okay.
like that. In a weird way, I like that.
I mean, what it is a color scheme we've been talking about for a very long time, isn't it?
Definitely. It's been something that's been toyed with. The idea around it. It's definitely different to what we've had before, or especially in recent memory.
Definitely. Oh, it's certainly different. That's for sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is genuinely our first reaction to this. We've not seen this. It's been kind of hinted at. I feel like on Twitter, and not from the club or anything like that, but within fan bases, and obviously we spoke to various people, like this idea that maybe we're getting something a bit more. I wouldn't call this retro, but something more of a retro scheme at the least in terms of the colours. Like, I think I threw up the idea of kind of the red and black we had in like 95, I think it was, and a few others. But
Yeah.
purple and green is something we've thrown around a number of times, isn't it?
Yeah, we've played with that colour scheme before, and I think it works. It's an interesting design as well. I think outside of the colour scheme, quite interesting, quite out there. I reckon this will be very chalk and cheese
It's a Marmite
with
one for sure,
some
isn't
fans. Yeah,
it?
it's
Definitely a Marmite one.
people will love it, people will absolutely hate it, and I reckon neutrals probably will come down on mostly hate.
Oh, we'll be getting some 1 out of 10s, or we'll get some 2 out of
Yeah,
10s from rival fans on this one.
I
Do
hope
you know
so.
what? Of all the kind of mad designs we could have come up with, this is nowhere near a bad one
I've
for
seen
me.
a lot worse.
I like the integration. I like the fact that the sponsors are
Yeah,
white.
yeah, that's very clever, very smart. I mean,
Yeah, it wouldn't. I don't. Yeah, this is definitely a kit that doesn't work if all the sponsors were their actual
no,
colours. Like for example, if you had the CBR, for example, in the yellow and blue, but maybe not. Uh, yeah, I think this worked. I think
absolutely.
I think this works to me.
And it's a bit of a take away from it's a very big move away from the home shirt. It
Yeah,
doesn't look
yeah,
it's not just a reverse colour scheme like we've had before. It's a out and out away shirt. It's an alternative shirt.
it is. It is. I'd like to know what's going on with the design. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. Is it just we'll just throw it on and see what it looks like? I don't know if there's any kind of rhyme and reason behind the actual yeah, the actual kind of patterns on the front of the shirt. I don't know if there's anything to that. I think it's just
Mm,
they just chucked it on. There's some triangles I can see.
yeah.
There's I guess like a stripe across a little bit, but there's like a bit of a paint splatter kind of pattern, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like
It's
it. You know,
yeah,
it's different.
interesting.
It's certainly different, and like you say, I think the crucial thing, and we're going to talk about with this with Steve, is it's been quite a while, I think, since we've had a proper alternate shirt in terms
Yeah.
of something that's not been all right. We're going to have the amber orange debate, but something either orange, amber, white, black. Yeah, and that's pretty much what we've had for the last kind of 5 6 years, isn't it? I can't remember the
Yeah.
last kind of really out there kit, so at least it is a bit different. I mean, we've certainly not had green shorts for a while, have we?
No, no. It'd be interesting to know what last time we had green shorts. I think I can remember way back, sort of early 2000s potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we had this design, well, not design, but last time we had this color scheme, I'm thinking around 2008, nine ish, maybe
Yeah,
around then.
yeah,
It was the Diggerland kit had it, didn't it? That that
yes,
had, that had the purple, green, and white, which is obviously what this is alluding to. And the famous Diggerland kit, or one of the famous Diggerland kits. There was definitely a couple in the 90s, which were probably a bit
yeah.
more of a traditional design, but had that kind of purple and green. But yeah, we've probably gone a whole decade and more without using this scheme. But it's not a complete. That's the thing. As you said, I don't really care what other fans think, but like
No,
a non-cast fan will look at this and they go, "That's the most random thing in the world. What on earth have you done?"
yeah,
There is a little bit of history behind these colours, at least, which other fans won't understand. But this is probably the fourth, fifth kit with this kind of purple and green, isn't it? So at least there's something kind of historically to go at.
I'm excited to see it being worn in person,
Yeah,
actually being worn. I always feel like kits look a lot different actually on the field than they do on a phone screen or
yeah,
on a laptop or computer screen.
yeah, 100%. We need to get a bigger shirt for broadband, don't we? That's what I'm noticing in the last two. I think in the last two photo shoots we've seen, also for the home kit, and now this one. I think Brody even needs a smaller top on. He's to get in the gym. I think a little bit, bless him.
He's
But
definitely
yeah,
not got a pro fit shirt on.
yeah, I completely agree. Though I think it's these shirts always look better on.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, we'll get onto the home kit when we get Steve on later, but I think the home kit will look fantastic
yeah.
on the players, and I think this is one which yeah, I like it. And if nothing else, we've got enough green that we can, if we're terrible, we can blend into the pitch, I suppose.
Yeah, hide.
Try and hide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first reaction,
I
Marmite.
like it.
Overall,
I
like it. It's going to
overall
be,
like it.
yeah, it's going to split opinion, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
even at, I mean, with 5 minutes into looking at it now, and I'm already on board with it, I think. So, yeah, happy.
Happy.
So, Steve, welcome first and
Thank you.
foremost. I always find this awkward because we've just said welcome before we've actually hit record. But welcome to the podcast, mate. Nice to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's been a really good listen for the few months that you've been doing it, so good to be on.
Oh, thank you, thank you. We
Thank
really do
you.
appreciate that. You are the perfect person, I think, for this particular podcast. I think that goes without saying. Obviously, you can find yourself on Twitter at Cast Rugby Shirts. Who else but to speak to on the day that the away kit has been launched? Um, it's going to split opinion a little bit, I think, isn't it? I think we discussed this the other day when we were kind of gunning for this podcast. It's certainly one that is going to split opinion. Obviously, we've already given our kind of initial opinions. Adam's also here.
Hello,
Adam's
guys.
we've already given our initial opinion in the first part of the podcast, so we've kind of got our feelings about it. Obviously, Steve, you've had a view to a certain extent of this kit for a long time.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's a great compliment to the home kit. So yes, I agree. I think it's going to be a bit more of one of those love it or hate it kind of kits. But they're the kind of kits that often turn into those kind of cult classics. And over time they often grow on people as well. So I think sometimes the initial reaction to it, you might see some kind of, oh, that's controversial, but over time it becomes less and less controversial and more kind of appealing. So I think it's a really good compliment to the home kit. Obviously, we've got with the home kit, we've gone for kind of classic design. It's simplistic. I think it's really effective. That home kit. So we've got a home kit that's got a really classic design. I think it'll look really good on the field as well with that amber at the top and the contrast with the black. It should be a really good look on field. But I think because of that classic design of that first kit, having something a little bit more abstract, a little bit more off the wall, maybe, it is a really good kind of foil for the home kit to have that kind of away shirt. So yes, it will split opinion. Obviously, we've had purple and green before, and it split opinion. I'm old enough to remember as a teenager at the time, this purple and green color scheme split in opinion then. And I think it'll do the same now. But I think again, what we always think about in designing the shirts is, in this season, have we got a range of shirts where one will appeal to everybody? So it's impossible to get a shirt that every single person likes. It's just not doable, it's why they have such a hard job with the England kit, because we're producing one shirt for the England kit. And nobody likes every single design and every single color scheme. So what we aim to do over the range, over the season, is design something that hopefully one of them will appeal to everybody, and hopefully multiple ones. But I think that's kind of obvious from the home and the away so far, is that those who are really liking the home kit potentially maybe aren't going to be that keen on the away, but those who want something a little bit more modern with a little bit more of a funky-ish design, I think will really go for the away kit. And if everybody likes one of those two, then our work has been really successful.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And I think that's the point with the away kit as well, in terms of this kind of funky design, as you say, and obviously a throwback to some colours we've used previously. Probably you'll know better than me, probably 3, 4, 5 times in the past. Away kits in recent years have been very cast colours, if that makes sense. We've kind of stuck with the kind of either white or the black, or obviously the amber. Because obviously we've gone to the amber kind of third kits and things like that, while we've had the orange. So it probably is the first one in quite some time where we've gone kind of well away from the kind of base colours, isn't it? What was the last one? What was the last one?
Yeah, we had that kind of blue and white in 2023. Obviously, that I think the kind of design features around that were again simplistic, but I think the away shirt last year was very much one that was meant to appeal to a broad range of people. Yeah. It had very good kind of casual wear appeal. You see a lot of people out and about in it when it's not game day, whereas you didn't necessarily see that with the orange shirts. You tended to see those on game day, but you know, the bright oranges and the predominantly amber shirts, maybe not necessarily what people are wearing on a day-to-day basis. That kind of, do they look good with a pair of jeans test. So the bright oranges, the bright ambers, the predominantly amber shirts, maybe a little bit less appealing for that day-to-day kind of casual wear, whereas last year's away shirt, I think, kind of was very good for that kind of casual wear, the day-to-day wear. And again, I think we've got that this year. I think that black home shirt with the amber top is a really nice casual wear shirt, and I think people will be wearing that other than on game day. Whereas I think with the away shirt, it could potentially be a very much this is a game day shirt, and this is the one I'm going to wear on a Friday night or a Sunday or whenever the fixture is. So I think we've covered that kind of range quite nicely as well, or Oxen have covered that range quite nicely as well, between having something that is kind of appealing for casual wear and can be worn on a day-to-day basis without sticking out like a sore thumb in the pub, but also the game day one.
Some people, I will say that.
Absolutely, and nor should it.
No,
I mean, coming back to those kind of really predominantly amber shirts, I love them. Right, I'm quite a traditionalist. I love to see cats playing in predominantly amber with some black, but ultimately the sales of those haven't been great. They've sold reasonably well, but they haven't sold as well as you'd expect, with the amount of people who are kind of on social media who want to go back to that predominantly amber color scheme. And certainly when we released the home shirt this time, there were a few comments of, you know, swap the colors around and it's a proper Casca shirt. But the third shirts that have been amber, they've sold okay, but they've not been as popular as you might think, if you're just looking at reaction on social media.
I made the point as well. I think I made the point to you, Adam, didn't I? The problem with, if we'd have gone the reverse with the home kit this year and had been predominantly amber with kind of the black chevron, whatever you want to call it, at the top as well, the problem I think you've got as well, as you say, they don't sell particularly well, but also probably one of the most traditional designs we've ever had was the third kit last year. So if you were ever going to get an amber shirt in this kind of modern generation, you were probably going to get one last year.
Absolutely.
And let's be honest, what are they, 51 quid in the shop? I mean, they're not cheap anymore. So there's people not necessarily, some do, of course they do, and obviously the club want this to be the case. I want this to be the case. I hope everyone buys every shirt we ever release, but they are quite expensive commodities nowadays. And realistically, if you've got, you know, the amber kind of 86 style jersey from last year, there's a good chance you're probably not going to go for just a standard amber design this year, I suppose. So it made perfect sense to me to go back to black, which obviously we've not done for a couple of years, or predominantly black. Obviously, we had one back in 2021, didn't we, for the cup run?
Yeah, I think one of the things you would say about black is it's a good seller. It looks good, it sells well, and if you can add that amber color scheme into it, it is a cash shirt. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things I always think around when I think about the home shirt of for Cass and for any club, I think one of the tests is to imagine it without the badge, imagine it without the sponsors. Does it still look like a cash shirt? Would you be able to give it to somebody who knows about rugby league, even without the badges and even without the sponsors, and show them it, and they say that's a cash shirt? And I think that's what we look at for that home shirt is, does it have that Cass image? Does it have that Cass kind of feel to it? And I think that's important for the home shirt, and I think we do with this one. I think if you took the logos and the sponsors off this year's home shirt and you showed it to someone who knows rugby league, they would say that's got to be a Cass shirt.
I think that's a good litmus test. I think that's a
Absolutely.
fair point. I'll bring you in, Adam, because the next thing I really want to discuss, which is really kind of key to all this, particularly the home kit, obviously, is this amber kind of orange debate. Obviously, we've gone amber this year. I think we've been orange since 2015, off the top of my head. Predominantly, obviously, in my lifetime, pretty much being a Castle, we've probably gone in kind of cycles, really. I think when I was kind of first knocking around, when I first started, well, again, I've said in the podcast many times, my early memories of the Tigers are around kind of 2004. So around that time, we were orange. We then moved to amber, I want to say about 2006, 2007, around then. And then the flip happened again in 2015. So we have gone on these cycles. We are now on the next cycle, it would seem, and we are now going amber again. Adam, make some mates. Which do you prefer? I know the answer to this question. So
Prefer
go
the
on.
orange. I'll be honest. I feel like the amber is just, it's too garish, especially when it is a shirt that's predominantly amber. I much prefer it when it's a subtle accent color, like in the home shirt, where the home shirt's predominantly black with the amber accents. I feel like it looks a lot better and a lot, I want to say, more acceptable. I know Steve's obviously mentioned about it being wearable on non-game days, but I just think with the logo at the moment, I know we've got little teaser for later on, coming on to a bit of a discussion about logo. The logo is orange. Tigers are orange.
That is the general debate, isn't it?
Which, so for that, and I feel like sometimes when you've got a predominantly amber kit and you've got the orange logo, it really stands out and it really bugs me. Whenever I've seen it, I'm like, it just doesn't look right.
I have noticed, I think, to be fair, I have noticed on some of the training range, I think whether they've done it, I assume it's a choice. I think they've changed the colour of the logo a little bit, haven't they? On at least some of the training range, I've noticed it is more of the ambery colour.
Yeah.
The actual tiger itself. It shows we can do that, which is
which that
I
looks
like
great.
that.
And I think the training kit with the amber accents looks quite smart and looks quite clever.
Yeah.
And I do quite like the kind of training range this year, especially. But it's just an interesting one.
Yeah, the training range has been really popular. Obviously, I had some conversations with Oxer before I came on today, and just to kind of get a bit of a heads up, and the training range has gone really well. It's selling really well. That the home training range, I've forgotten, they've given it a name, haven't they? Electric training range.
Electric, I think.
Yeah, it's selling really well. It's proving to be really popular. As is the home replica. That's also selling really well. So it seems to have been a positive move back to black and amber. And ultimately, it can be a little bit easy to be swayed by what people are saying on social media. But ultimately, sales dictate how popular a shirt is. And this seems to be doing really well. And the other thing again with social media is obviously those people who like it are on Oxer Elite Pro's website buying it, whereas those people who don't like it are on Twitter selling as they don't like it. So you've always got to be a little bit careful, because sometimes what's maybe on social media isn't necessarily a true reflection of how popular something is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I know which people I'd prefer to listen to. It's the ones who are giving 51 quid to the club, I think, in most instances. But this amber orange thing, again, we'll come on to it later on, because we're going to mention kind of logo and the kind of general brand of the club. I think that's the core issue. I think in terms of the shirts themselves, in terms of the training ranges, in terms of the replicas, I think you're right. What sells is what we should go with. I think it's as simple as that. We're in a sport with money, absolutely hemorrhaging out of the game. Any way we can create revenues, we should create revenue simply. And if there's a certain style that's going to sell more kits, then we should go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think as well what we need to think around with the shirt designs. There was a lot of stuff around negativity around all 4 shirts last year, and I think we did for the year before. You can't have it both ways. If you want to generate revenue and you want to sign the players who you want to see on the field, then
exactly.
the way to generate revenue is to produce stuff that people buy. And if the business model is that 4 shirt designs sell more in total than 3, well, that has an impact on who you can sign. So last year, when we needed those new players, would we have been able to bring all of those new players in if we hadn't gone with the 4 shirt model? Potentially not.
Absolutely. I think we had a question very, very early on in the podcast, episode 3 or 4, when I did one of the initial Q&As about training ranges. So it was a similar kind of thing. Obviously, 4 kits. Generally, we've got 5, 6, 7, whatever it might be, different training ranges throughout the year. And people say, "No, it's too many. It's too many." But I kind of raised it to that person. Walk down Carlton Lanes in Castleford, and you'll see people wearing one of every kind of range. People buy it, and people might initially say that this away kit, for example, is again like funky. It's a bit too garish instead of there because it's got this abstract design. Look at all the training kits you've worn over the last 10 years. Look at all the shirts that have flown out of the shop with these crazy designs. I mean, I think every year we see a training range, and there's something in this initial training range, even why I look at that personally, I go, not for me, but that's the point, isn't
Somebody
it? It's
will
not for
wear it.
me. Somebody will wear it. You will go abroad, and someone will be wearing that because you see people every it doesn't matter what country you go to, you'll see a cast man in a garish training top. This is how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes I think people perhaps underestimate the amount of data analysis that goes into what Oxen and Elite Pro produce next. They're not going to produce something similar to a line that hasn't sold. So they would not be producing these designs if a similar previous design hadn't sold well. Because that would be really bad for their business. And there's a lot of work goes into analyzing sales and who buys what, how many kids shirts, how many adult shirts are sold in each design, etc. And ultimately, they wouldn't produce them if they didn't sell.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I just want to move on to obviously kind of your involvement generally. I think a lot of people listening to this podcast will be aware of you. Obviously, people have communicated with you on Twitter over the years will know that in particular you were heavily involved with the 23 Magic kit last year, the Tuera Nikau inspired shirt, which I've actually got just over my right shoulder. I've got one over here. It's an absolute beauty in my opinion.
Really?
I know you've talked to the club about this, and obviously there was a video on that the club put out last year, but just that anyone who didn't see that, anyone just unaware, could you just talk through your kind of involvement generally in the kind of design process and kind of everything that went into creating what is one of the better kits we've had in recent years, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, first of all, it's a real privilege to be able to work with Oxer and be able to work with the club, and in this instance, a real privilege to work with Tuara as well. They say kind of never meet your childhood heroes, but in this case, T was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, we didn't meet him face to face because he's still based in New Zealand, but all the communication with him was so positive, and he was so humble around the club actually wanting to produce a shirt that was a tribute to him. So essentially, one of my relationship with Oxen kind of built probably over lockdown. So interaction on Twitter with some of the guys who work there, and particularly Jenkinson, who's the CEO, who's obviously been involved in that kind of industry for a very long time. Lockdown kind of gave me the opportunity to share the shirts that I'd kind of collected over the years, that I'd got in a cupboard, but not really, apart from kind of the small world of people who collect rugby league shirts, kind of not really shared them more publicly. And lockdown gave me the opportunity to do that because you were shut in the house, and what else could you do apart from put loads of pictures up of old cast rugby shirts? So kind of started forming that relationship through lockdown on Twitter and kind of messaging with Lee and a couple of other people around classic shirt designs, etc., etc. And then just after lockdown, joined the fan steering group. And I think there's an episode kind of in the future, hopefully, to kind of look into fan steering group.
Yes.
Yeah.
So joined the fan steering group, and at one of those steering groups, Oxen came along and basically took feedback on merchandising, what we wanted to see in future. And one of the things that we talked around as a steering group was having the retro shirts that came out last year. And they were kind of the kind of seed for them was sown in 2021, and obviously on the back of that then built a stronger relationship with Oxen, and it takes time because this kind of industry, you can't have leaks essentially, so you need to take that time to build that trust with the people who you're working with. So initially my involvement was more kind of influential in terms of design and suggesting maybe this design might work, maybe that design might work, but I never actually saw anything. And then as that relationship built, Oxen would send me kind of the design templates and the options. So they tend to do kind of 4 or 5 options for the home shirt, and they would ask for feedback on those. And then it kind of went on to seeing the final design and Oxen asking for feedback and small changes. So my first involvement in the shirts was kind of making slight changes, like changing the lettering on the Castleford Tigers around the badge. So saying that I think that would look better in black, I think that would look better in white. The third shirt that we had last year, the throwback to the '86 shirt, that originally was designed with very thin pinstripe kind of hoops rather than the thicker hoops. So kind of working and saying, look, I think it'd be better with a bit of a thicker hoop if we're going for 1986. And then obviously moving on to the Tuara Nikau shirt, everything kind of culminated in kind of the steering group saying, could we have a tribute shirt, which was something that we talked around before, tribute shirt to a player. And I already had a very set design in my head over what that could be. So kind of pitched it almost to Oxen and emailed and said, this is what I think we should do. It should be what the purpose was to pay tribute to Tuara. So we didn't want a traditional cast shirt, but it needed to still obviously be a cast shirt. Yeah. So obviously we went with the black for his New Zealand heritage, and then the design on the front from one of his old cast shirts, I think it was the away 91 to 93 shirt with the kind of disrupted chevron on it. And then there was that really iconic New Zealand shirt that Tuara wore during his time at Cast with the checkerboard pattern on it.
Checkerboard, yeah, of course.
And you could just see the two things coming together. We've got a design here that's like a chevron. Let's include that checkerboard design in it to pay tribute to his appearances for New Zealand. Then obviously we got in touch with Tuara. We sent some of the images over. We asked him if he wanted to make any contribution, and he was keen to have those Maori spears that are on the sleeves. That was all Tuara. He wanted that design because that had been on one of his Maori New Zealand shirts that he really took pride in. So we put that on the design kind of with his guidance, and we produced what we produced. So my involvement's kind of gone from being a little bit of a sounding board all the way up to kind of having full control of that design for the Nikau shirt.
I mean, Adam, how good is that?
That's incredible, isn't it? I think for most cast fans, being able to sort of steer and almost design a cast shirt, something that you can probably kids will dream about. So to be able to do it, amazing.
I mean, thanks to the club, obviously, for giving us this opportunity to kind of see the away kit ahead of time, obviously, to get this podcast out. I was like a kid at Christmas just seeing the finished product. Never mind actually producing one from scratch. So
we were so excited, weren't we, on Monday when we recorded our initial reactions.
I was trying to keep it cool.
It's kind of like as a kid, you can imagine, all those designer shirt competitions that football teams used to do, and it used to be in the football magazines, and you had to kind of design. I remember spending hours and hours designing cast shirts as a kid, and thinking about what they could look like, and kind of cutting out kind of shirt shaped bits of paper and putting designs on. and I remember, spending hours doing that as a kid, and hopefully all that practice paid off. Hopefully, and it seemed to, everyone seemed to be really positive about that shirt, which was great. I must admit, I was absolutely bricking it. The day I'd got up to the day before release thinking this is great, I love this design, and the 24 hours before I thought, oh God, what if nobody likes it?
I can imagine.
So yeah, be careful what you wish for.
I'm certainly, as I say, I've literally got one in this room with me. I think it's an absolute cracker. I think we've had a good run of Magic Weekend shirts, to be honest, but that was right up there with the very best. But yeah, I mean, Adam, how good is it that, I mean, obviously there's been lots of talk about kind of communication with the club and how open the club are just generally with various things, and obviously I think we've potentially had a small part in opening that kind of side of things up to communication wise, but it's just stuff the fans don't know, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
that, like, obviously Oxen themselves as well. It's great that Oxen are so open for this kind of stuff, but obviously the club are involved in that as well. It's brilliant that the fan steering group yourself have been involved for, like, sounds like the last 3 or 4 years in the design of these kits. Because, like I say, as we mentioned, there's such a massive revenue driver out there. They are so important to the club. So to be putting those in the hands of the fans, one, it's a great sign of trust. But Adam, it's really positive, isn't it? It's just really, really positive.
Incredibly positive, and I think the fan steering group's only going to grow in its involvement and its ability to sort of help the club along. It's only a good thing being able to kind of put some decisions to fans, let them have their say, let them feedback on things.
Yeah.
But as you say, having Oxen come actually down to the fan steering group, listening to fans' opinions, advice, then obviously getting Steve, yourself on board and running things by you, letting actual cast fans have a say down the track, even if it's halfway down the track when it comes to shirts design, kit, training wear design. End of the day, the fans are the ones that are going to be buying this stuff. So realistically, it's the best course of action to get them involved as early as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit sensitive, obviously, because again, the fan steering group are great, but Oxen don't obviously choose who's on that fan steering group. So
Yeah, of course.
it's kind of got, the shirt stuff's kind of had two levels to it, in that
Yeah.
they do come to fan steering group and they listen to the group, but when it comes to kind of being more directly involved in seeing the shirts, being involved in that process, that's kind of something that I've done separately to the fan steering group. So it's always an interesting meeting for me when Oxen come, because I'm not quite sure who I'm more part of,
Yeah. Well, it's not a bad couple of camps to have a feet in either, I suppose. So, but no, I mean, I'll say you've done a fantastic job, obviously, with the Magic Weekend kit itself. But even the little, like, touches you said, even the stripes on the 86 shirt last year, it's little details like that. I mean, as far as hands go, they don't get much safer than yours, I assume, with your knowledge of kits in years gone by. We are going to get on to kind of favourite all-time cast kits, because obviously we are, while we're not on this kind of podcast. First and foremost, just a general kind of chat on kits just generally across the league. Obviously, in recent years, I've been on a train about half an hour ago and seen some interesting announcements from various clubs. Wigan Warriors have just released some interesting ones, to say the least. Yeah, what's your kind of take on kits in recent years? And I'll kick off with the obvious one, Lee. what do you reckon, Steve?
Well, let's just say I'm banned. I think I'm blocked by Lee's social media on every
one.
social media platform for pointing out that leopard's a jaguar. I don't think they were that keen. But I mean, I'm torn, right? Because it needs to be distinctive, and they need a change at Lee. So I am a little bit torn. From a design point of view, I think it's horrific. I think the shirt is awful, and this year's. But I mean, some other clubs, they look like they're employing Derek Beaumont to design theirs as well. Those ones we're seeing that are really garish, really out there. I'm not quite. I don't personally see it. I personally can't imagine that many people buying those. They're more like the purple and green kit that we've done. I think will divide opinion, but it's not fluorescent. it's still but these were they're really, really extreme end, aren't they, of bright and distinctive, and I'm not convinced around that carrying on forever. And one of the things I think the clubs will need to be careful of is these things go in cycles. So the pink kits, for example, Hull KR released their pink kit today.
Yep.
And they've badged it as, dare to be different. I'm not convinced it's that different anymore.
It's not different when we've had countless over the last 20 years, is it? I mean, Leeds released a pink kit maybe 16, 17 years ago now. I mean, it's nothing new, is it?
No. So I think clubs are maybe trying to jump onto the kind of garish, outlandish bandwagon, and I'm not sure how long it's going to last. But again, all of those kit companies will be doing their data analysis. They will all be looking at prior sales. They will be looking at what's been bought in the training range before they decide what colours to use in replica shirts. And they will have seen the data that suggests that those shirts will sell and be popular. And there's not much you can do to argue with that, because they have the data at their fingertips on sales and what's popular that we don't necessarily have.
Yeah, I suppose it is quite interesting as well. I mean, as you say, they're all doing the research. There's different companies, and as you say, Hull KR gone pink. Who are the other clubs? Wigan, as I said today. The home kit is it's a bit of an eye tester as you're looking at it. It's an interesting one with what done with the striping, but the away kit in particular is extremely garish, and there is multiple examples this year of Warrington obviously have gone. So to be fair, it's a similar scheme to us, but it's more garish than ours for sure. And obviously they've gone predominantly green. It is interesting how many clubs have gone. Yeah, I know bogey green.
Frog green, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting how many clubs, particularly the away kits, have gone quite bold at the very least.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I think it comes back to that trying to hit the range. So if you've got a traditional, like Wigan have gone with what can you do with red and white hoops? They've tried to do something a little bit different, but essentially it's red and white hoops. You've got to go different for your away, and it's hitting that range so that you produce one shirt that everybody likes. And it's no good just producing another basic design on top of another basic design just in a different colour. Because if you don't like basic design, then you're not buying it whatever colour it is. And I think Saints have the hardest job here.
Absolutely. Because I was about to bring that up. Yeah.
What a nightmare, because they have a red V, and if you stray from that red V, their fans are up in arms. So they've got a really hard job. And again, their shirt this year is almost identical to last year's.
It's got a collar.
It's got a collar and
red on the collar, I suppose.
Two-tone. Apparently, the chevron's two-tone. Apparently, I couldn't see that particularly well in images, but apparently it's a little bit more obvious, kind of in the flesh. But they are really hamstrung by their design. But we're not, and I think that's one of the advantages that we have as a club, is that we're not that hamstrung by a particular design like Saints are dictated by that red V, and Wigan are dictated by those red and white hoops, and they don't go away from them. We've got a lot more flexibility than that. The other thing about this year's kits I think is really interesting are those kits where the sponsors have gone, have coordinated, and how much better those kits look for their sponsors agreeing to go with the colour scheme of the kit. That it looks so much better, and that can only be good for the sponsors in my view, because they sell more shirts, the shirts look better, they sell more shirts, they get more exposure. And thinking to that Wigan one that's released today, the sponsors it's very contrasts with the shirt so much. And I get the argument, well, that's what the sponsor pays for, they stand out. But if that deters people from buying the shirt, then they lose the exposure that they might have had if they'd have coordinated. And I think that's really obvious on our away shirt this year. So that purple and green shirt, the sponsors have all gone white, because it wouldn't have looked right to have the red Bar Benidorm, the blue and yellow CBR. That wouldn't have looked right on that shirt. And I think it's great that the sponsors are starting to, and our sponsors are starting to buy into this idea that it's actually better to fit the sponsor into the shirt design rather than just slap something on top.
I must admit, it was the first thing I noticed. The first thing I noticed was the sponsor integration on the new away kit. The fact it was white, and just an absolute sigh of relief, wasn't it? To see those designs in white.
Yeah, because we've looked through a couple of shirts this year. You mentioned the Wigan one that's just come out, but we commented on the away shirt for St. Helens.
Yeah.
How much we love that shirt, and the only gripe we've got with it is the fact that Home Bargains have not budged, obviously, on that integration and have said no, we're having his logo. Which, I mean, they're well within the rights to do. Obviously, as a kind of multi-million-pound business, they want to keep the integrity of their brand logo. But how much better would it have looked if it had have integrated on that shirt?
Just taking the blue off. If they're just taking the blue off, they can have the red.
I reckon that'd have been probably the nicest shirt this season throughout Super League, if just that little bit.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because I understand the point of view as well, in the sense that, but people are talking about, I mean, we just brought it up, people talking about Home Bargains because of that, which I get the contrast thing, but it's not in a positive light. I'm not going to actively go out more to shop at Home Bargains because it's a bright. Because it's bright.
I might do the opposite. I might deliberately not shop there because they've ruined a rugby league shirt.
But as you say, the Saints might have been looking at one of the highest selling away shirts of all time if they just done a little more integration there, but it's one of those debates, I guess. Just coming back to leagues, I think it's funny. Adam Lee, I must admit, I'll kick off. I think I've said this before. The home kit last year, completely agree with Steve. It was atrocious. Absolutely, it just looked like it had been slapped together in a few weeks, which it was. I didn't mind the away kit. I'll be honest. I don't actually mind this idea of using the leopard print as a device, as a kind of branding tool. I think there's only so much they can do with it, as you say. I mean, you've got to. I do feel for the Lee fans who've been there 70 years, who're so used to red and white hoops and going away with that. And I don't particularly. I think the home kit's fine this year, but at least they are sticking to leopard print. I do think, to an extent, they do have to be applauded in the sense that they are trying to get something that is Lee. Well, this modern Lee, I guess.
They're trying to be quite out there, which I think is Derek Beaumont to a T.
Yeah.
Very much outlandish character in himself. Chose to rebrand the team because he likes leopards.
I mean,
I think
what it is, isn't it?
I agree with you in saying the away shirt, and I think the Wembley shirt were definitely better than the initial home shirt.
Still weren't great, but
weren't great. I mean, but it's nice to see a bit of an improvement. And and this year, obviously sticking with it, kind of going with that branding, it gives you a talking point.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sat, as you said, we're sat here talking about like the same. We're sat talking about Home Bargains when we probably wouldn't be.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an element with Lee as well. I think we said it on the podcast a few weeks ago. Had they come 11th, had they not got to Wembley, it's probably a different conversation. It's one of those where it kind of worked because they were so good on the field last year. But had it gone the other way, I think it would have been the laughing stock. It really was. And they clearly didn't execute the brand shift very well, obviously. But it is interesting that how they've gone down that approach. And because obviously it is something that not even rugby league, but just across sport, there isn't really a team that's kind of taken what is a recognised colouring. I guess it is a pattern that you could take on. It is kind of recognisable, so it is interesting they've gone that route. But
not doing their IMG social media criteria bad either, is it?
Not at all.
No, it's not. No, and it's certainly not. I don't know about the website hits because that was still Centurions until about August, but
completely disappeared for a while, I think, as well. So that one's not the greatest move, I'll be honest.
Not great, and it is quite funny that Elgren ran a mile this year and
I don't know what happened there. Obviously, that I've seen the change. I don't know if they were kind of out of their deal anyway, or whether that's been a reaction to it. What I would say is, you didn't see Elgren retweet much of Lee and their shirts last year. They were kind of they're big on their retweeting any club that they supply, but they weren't massively retweeting Lee's kits, were they? And there was a little bit on social media. I don't know. You had to probably dig a little bit, quite deep. But being sad like I am, I'm always digging into the kind of shirt stuff. And I think there were a few things that Elgren had put on social media in reply to Lee fans' comments that suggested that relationship had broken down.
Yeah, and Elgren very much a brand, obviously from yesteryear, but are now very much back in the last couple of years. very much a brand's trying to grow and get more clubs on board rather than lose contracts at this point. Certainly the Challenge Cup winners. You'd think they'd be throwing money at it if they wanted to be involved. And we joke about the home kit, but did Derek literally just do that on paint and say you've got to build as that? Maybe. I think it's not beyond the realms of possibility. That was really the case. So, yeah, good to see a brand like Elgin back in the game, though, to be fair. And I think they've made some pretty good kits for.
And their Wakefield kits were great last year, weren't they?
They were. I don't mind the current one, to be fair. I think it's a bit Roosters, but they've got nice kits, so why not? I think Elgin are a good brand to have back in the game. But enough about other teams. Not
as good as Oxer, though, right?
Absolutely not. Let's talk about Cast. Favorite all-time Cast kits? It's a difficult question for you, Steve, because you've got such. I mean, obviously you're so involved in it, and I mean, you've literally dedicated your whole Twitter account to it. So this is quite a difficult question, I'm sure. But we'll start with Adam to give you a little bit of chance to think. And Adam will be pleased I put him on the spot with this one. Favorite all-time casket? Go, hit me with it.
It's a tricky one because there's quite a few that have got meaning. When you say it immediately, I'm thinking about the blue KFC kit, just sort of from my past.
Okay, yeah.
Blue KFC. I was talking
to on that one.
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine about obviously giving him a little sneak peek that we'd recorded and seen the kit. Never showed it, don't worry. And the first thing he brought up was the blue KFC kit. I went, I know how beautiful that kind of the deep royal blue, and then it was kind of like a lighter blue on the sides, if I remember. Steve's giving me a nod.
We had a couple
of
that. Yeah.
So that's kind of one from yesteryear that I kind of remember. The red Diggerland kits. They speak out into me. The quartered 80th anniversary kit. And I know that's going to be a favourite because we've talked about that before, and I know Steve just give me a point, and what a beautiful kit.
Stunning.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Me and Steve spoke the other day, obviously preparing for this podcast, and completely pretty much out of context, you sent me a picture of that kit, didn't you, Steve? And I was like, me and Adam were just talking about that on the podcast. Yeah. Like, it's an absolute beauty. Like I think you said yourself, apart from probably Harlequins, obviously from the rugby union, and there's been a few examples I think you said Leeds have back in the day. Not too many teams kind of go for that quarter design either, do they?
No, and it's such a good design as well. It's simplistic but really effective. And talking around like top cast kits, it's definitely like in the top 5 for me of kits that we've produced. And sometimes I think I'm a little bit biased because I like the more unusual, kind of, or the rarer, maybe is fair to say. So obviously that kit was a one-off game. They didn't actually produce that many replicas. So if you've got a replica one of those, you've got a pretty rare cast shirt as far as rare cast shirts goes. And again, the playing shirts, they literally numbered up whoever was playing in that game and went with that. And they're the only playing shirts that exist as well. So I sometimes think I'm maybe a little bit biased by the rarer stuff. But I don't think I am in this case. I think it is just such a good design, and one that I think I'd love to see it back. I'd love to see that come back.
It's an absolute belter. I'll ask you. I'll go for mine in a minute, but I think while I'm speaking, Steve, if you go favorite home, favorite away, I think that'd be interesting. So kind of cover both bases, and I think I'll give mine first. So I think my favorite away kit actually is one that's before my time. It was actually a couple of years before I was even born, but looking back on it, just kind of the imagery I've seen of it, someone posted an old program. I think it was Richard Shaw, right? Actually posted an old program for a couple of weeks ago from I think it was '95 of Graham Stedman wearing it, the red, white, and black kit. If we're ever gonna create similar to what we did with the third kit last year, a kind of modern version of a retro kit, I want that one. I think that's an absolute belter. I absolutely love that design. Maybe it's because I also follow Liverpool as well, so I like red. I don't know, but I love that kit. I absolutely love that kit. Hicks on the front of it as well, I believe, at that time, which is obviously iconic in itself. So that's one from, before my even time, really, but I absolutely love that design. I'd love to see a modern version of that. We have done a little bit of red since there was the Help for Heroes kit around kind of the end of the noughties, I think. But we haven't done red too much. In terms of a home kit, kind of in my time watching the game, I thought 2014 was superb. Kind of similar to the home kit this year, really. It probably is the reverse in a way to what people were calling for this season. But yeah, the 2014 kit obviously got to Wembley in that. Didn't play in Wembley in that one, but got to Wembley in that jersey. We were talking about Darryl Clark the other day, weren't we, Adam, in terms of his Man of Steel year, and just an absolute brilliant design. And the away kit was fantastic that year as well. But I think the 2014 home of like recent kits in terms of the last 15, 20 years, absolute belter for me. But you're the expert, Steve. What are the best caskets ever? Go on.
Ooh, for me, the iconic one is the '86, the cup final one. And obviously we've had updates on that as recently as last year. But I think that is the iconic Castleford design, that amber with the two narrow hoops. I just think that is quintessentially Cass. So as a home shirt, I think that probably just trumps everything. And yes, it's probably because there's all those famous images around winning that cup in '86, etc. But that win cemented that, I think, as an iconic Castleford shirt. Obviously,
100%.
the stuff from the cup final winning shirts from the late '60s, early '70s. Yes, I think people know what those designs are, but people don't have those within living memory. Potentially, not many people have those within living memory, and certainly at that time, what the team wore on the pitch wasn't really given that much attention as it is now. But that win in '86, I think, set that home shirt as an iconic Cass shirt, which is why we've been coming back to it on and off over the years. So in terms of home shirt, I can't look beyond that.
Yeah,
Away, away. One of the shirts I really love is the one that we based the Nick shirt on. So it's a really amber away shirt, but often people think it's a home shirt because it's so amber, but actually it was the away shirt. And I just love that design. It's just so 90s. It's so different. It's got just the right amber shading, in my view, that little bit darker amber than we see on more recent shirts. And I just loved that design. I thought it was brilliant. Again, in terms of rarities, a bit of an interesting story around that one, because there weren't actually that many of those produced either. Apparently there's a fire at the Elgren factory, so the next batch of shirts that were meant to be coming to the club to be sold never made it. They were burnt in the fire at the factory, as was the next batch of playing shirts. So the club apparently often tried to avoid using that design because we only had one set of playing shirts in that design, so they would try and preserve this one kit until the end of its use, which of course in those days wasn't just one season. It was 2, sometimes 3 seasons. So you won't see many games where we were wearing that shirt, and that's because we only had one batch, which I think is a really kind of interesting story for people who are sad like me and kind of find that stuff interesting.
No, absolutely. I love little nuances like that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Anything to do with that kind of equipment kits. One of my favourite stories across kit, not rugby league, but generally, is the story behind the Pittsburgh Steelers and the NFL. The reason why they've got the logo on one side of the helmet is because I think they ran out of stickers originally back in the day, back in the 50s. For whatever reason, the Steelers logo was just on one side. Just a kitman's mistake 60 years ago, and they just stick with it. They must have won that day. So they go a bit. I love little stuff like that with kits. And to be honest, I think probably the most famous kit debacle in our time, Adam, would be going to Halifax and wearing the Halifax kits.
At that game, I remember that very well. Very interesting to suddenly see us rock out in the Halifax blue.
Probably the best Halifax Blue Sox team of
the last 20 Rangi Chase played, didn't he?
Yeah. I think we lost actually. We weren't very good.
Well, there was, and again that there was big debate around that at the time, because on the RFL's kit schedule, we were actually due to wear the away shirt, so we took our away shirt, but we'd done a deal with Halifax earlier in the year whereby we wore our away shirt at Weldon Road. So we wore the white version at Weldon Road, and they wore their home. And the agreement between the two clubs was that we would then swap when we went to Huddersfield, and we would wear our home and they would wear their away as a bit of a sales pitch, I think, because obviously you see the players wearing it on the pitch, then you want to buy the shirt. So according to the RFL schedule, we were right. We took the right kit.
It was Huddersfield that brought the wrong
It
kit,
was
wasn't it?
Huddersfield that had their own kit, but there was this agreement between the clubs that we'd reverse them, and ultimately, I think the rules were that, and still are, that all the clubs have to take all their kits to every game if the referee wants a change of kit, because they think there's a clash. So ultimately, Cass hadn't taken both kits. They'd just taken the kit they thought they were going to wear, which is why we ended up I think we got fined for it, didn't we? In the end,
I think we did. Yeah, I think as me and Adam know well, it's a tricky old game. This Kitman business, isn't it? We've had a little bit of experience.
Stu Voss does a brilliant job.
I've got an 100% record as a kitman. Let's be honest. Let's remember that, Ross. I've got an 100% record as a kitman.
You do. Adam was honorary kitman for one cast game when we played London Broncos away in 2018.
Yeah, unfortunately, Stu Voss was ill that game, so I stepped up to the mark.
Yeah, 100% recorded. Not sure about it since. But we are hopefully, we are going to get Stu on the podcast at some point. We chatted to him a few weeks ago, and I can't wait to get Stu on. And he'll be talking us through the antiquities of being cast as a legendary kitman. I'm sure. It is really interesting. Let's move on a little bit then. As I said, I kind of want to bring up kind of the general kind of branding of the club, as we kind of touched on earlier, the orange amber stuff, and also the logo itself. Just generally the way the club's branded. Obviously, we are going more towards the amber direction now. That does still throw up, as you mentioned, Adam, the fact that we might have amber on the fields, amber across a lot of our social media marketing now as well. That's kind of all switched over. We've still got an orange logo. We do, because as we said, the Tigers are orange and all kind of stuff. Probably raises a wider point on the logo itself, though, doesn't it, Adam? And obviously, we both work in the social media space. It's not the worst in Super League for that, in terms of its kind of durability, I suppose, in the media space. It's certainly not the worst. I think there's some really bad ones actually in Super League in terms of how they kind of move over into the digital area. Hull FC aren't great, despite it being iconic. Leeds Rhinos aren't great for that, to be honest, with the logo. But ours isn't fantastic either. Probably middle of the ground. Similar to what Wigan have done recently, Hull KR have done recently. Wakefield did, just no one noticed because it was so small. The little changes they did. Adam, I'll come to you first. Is it time for us to kind of look at this? Go on.
Yeah, I'm not even going to let you finish the question. Yes, I feel like it's almost past the time that it's time to give it a modern twist and really look at how we kind of position our logo across not only social media but then everything to do with apparel and kits, and kind of when it's represented around the stadium and pitch side, you can really do some great work with a good logo that you can utilize in many, many different ways. We've spoken before, Ross, and we're big fans of OKRs.
Yeah.
The way that they are able to pull out that sort of robin/crown that they've kind of created.
Such a smart design, I think.
It's just incredibly clever, and it really does bring another dimension to when they are trying to do promotional stuff.
Yeah, I think it speaks to their wider marketing campaign, doesn't it? I think obviously it was a big part of that, and it was kind of the catalyst for a lot of the other stuff they've done. But yeah, it's an interesting thing now in terms of logos, because I think traditionally it's always been, how does it look on TV? How does it look on the kit? How does it look on a shirt? The fact of the matter is now, we're all on his phones 24/7, very much. The number one time a Cast fan, a diehard Cast fan who goes every single game, the most they're ever going to see the logo is in the top left of their phone as they're scrolling down Facebook, as they're scrolling down Twitter, Instagram. It's pretty small, and you need something nowadays that's quite as in your face as you possibly can. I think in that very small space, which I think Hull do very well because it is so simple and yet so striking. What's your thoughts, Steve? I mean, obviously, I don't want to say I don't like the logo. I do love the Cast badge. Obviously, I've grown up with it, and obviously it's been around since early 90s, hasn't it? It's got a lot of history in itself. What is your take on it, and do you think it is time for a bit of a change?
Yeah, I think it is time. I'm a massive fan of the logo as well. But I think as we move into more and more that digital age, I think it just needs a simplification. So you'll notice even on some of the shirts now, it's really hard to produce that tiger head, particularly towards the bottom where the kind of mouth's open and
If we're
there's a
being
lot of
honest,
detail in it. It's yeah.
the original logo isn't called in properly. No one wants to talk about it. It's not actually called in properly.
No. So I still think what I don't want us to do is to go to a completely different design completely, like a full tiger leaping or a West Tigers kind of version. I don't want us to go to that, but I think I like the concept of the tiger head and it facing forwards and seeing both its eyes, and I like that concept, but I think what we have at the moment needs simplification.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like potentially, if there is a way, like Hawkeye have done, of pulling elements of it out, which are then distinctly Castleford as well, in kind of a secondary logo or something like that, whether it be aspects of the old coat of arms, for example, which they could put into it, or perhaps CT or whatever you want, or simply Cass. The various different things which graphic designers much better than me, much cleverer than me, can do these things.
And Centenary coming up as well could be a perfect chance.
Perfect chance.
I think that is a real kind of 100 years. Let's get this modernized now, and I think that would be a really good point at which to launch a simplified badge.
Yeah, I completely agree. We discussed it the other day. Whether it be the 100th year itself, the centenary itself, we go maybe give it one last run, or we go coat of arms or something like that, and then the 101st year, maybe we go new era. We've done 100 years. Here's to the next 100 years. Maybe there's various kind of with my marketing head on various ways to do that. But I completely agree. In the next 2-3 years, I think it does need to. It needs to happen because we're going to get left behind. I think because I think every other team is going to do so at a certain point. As I say, we've seen multiple of the last 5 years. Like I say, I still don't think we're the worst. Like I say, Leeds Rhinos, Catalans isn't great, really. Catalans are a brand that could really be propelled, I think, by a much more striking logo. We are just one of those logos which is just a bit clip arty, dare I say, because they are. I mean, they're from that kind of generation. They're from the 90s, aren't they? They're from that era. When we're not in that era anymore. So as much as we love it, and we do love it, it would be nice to move on a tad. So yeah, Centenary then, as we say, it's only a couple of years away. 1926 to 2026, 100 years of the club, as we say. I agree. I think some kind of logo approach will be the right thing to do. In terms of what we actually wear that year, it's tough, isn't it? We had this discussion, obviously, we've talked about as our favourite kits already. As you mentioned, 86 might be the quintessential Cass kit. So do we just go with that, or like I say, there's a course for the 69-70. There's a case for loads of kits, isn't there?
Absolutely, and I think I was quite surprised when I saw the third kit for last year, because I had in my head that we would probably go with that for 2026 home. So when I saw the design for that, initially my reaction was, whoa, well, what about 2026? Because surely we're going with that design for 2026, but I don't think we can now. I think that would be too similar, too close together. We usually tend to go with that kit like once a decade. So 2023, we had it back in 2011. So it'd be too soon to do that kit again. I think the decisions that need to be kind of made first are whether the home shirt is like a centenary shirt, and we have it all year. But obviously for the 80th and the 90th, we had a one-off. Worn, the 80th was won in one game, but the 90th, I think it was won in a few games, but it was back end of the season. Did we call it
a Super 8 shirt? I think.
Yeah.
That's what it was, wasn't it?
No, I think the names around that year were a bit confusing, because we had the Magic Weekend shirt, the one with the big tiger on it in 2016.
Yes,
that was Magic Weekend and Super 8s.
Yeah, I think.
And then we had 90th anniversary, but we did wear it in the Super 8s.
We used it as an alternate for the Super 8s.
We did. Yeah. So whether we go down that route of having a centenary shirt that's either a one-off or a late season celebration shirt, or perhaps worn in a game that's the closest to when the first ever Cass fixture was played, I think that's a decision. Do we have a centenary shirt that is the home shirt and lasts all year, or do we have this one-off or limited shirt like we had in for the 80th and the 90th. So I think that needs discussion first as well.
Yeah, 100%. As you've said, there's so many different options, and we are blessed in the fact we do have so many options we could go with for that. I mean, there's literally 4 base colours where you could realistically look at it and go, that's a casket. Because you could go black, you could go white, you could go orange, you could go amber, which is no other team's really got that. I don't think across the sport, in the sense that they all can look like a casket if you take the badge and the sponsor off, as you said earlier on in the pod. Yeah, we had a couple of, like I said, we had a chat about the centenary a couple of days ago. I want to get your take on this, Adam, as well. It's away from kits, more just the general cast talk, but that does seem like a year, if any year. I'm not even entirely sure, and I hope someone will correct me on Twitter if this is the case. In fact, you'll probably know yourself. In terms of kind of a Hall of Fame that the club has, do we have a proper official one that's really kind of given the time of day? I think there is. There's comments about like immortals that we've got within the club. I believe they're on the wall in the training ground. I think I saw it on a video the other day, but it's not really talked about, is it? And it'd be great to really kind of make a big song and dance about a Hall of Fame if it doesn't already officially exist. We really need to make sure one's in place in 2026, don't we?
Absolutely. I think to celebrate the history of the club, it's a great way to do it, and you can do it sort of at a nice little event with sort of the immortals, or whatever we call them, Hall of Fame players that are obviously still with us.
Yeah.
Celebrate the ones obviously from yesteryear that have obviously unfortunately passed away. But we need to really celebrate it in a way where we can get every fan involved in a way, whether it's through centenary shirts, events, kind of educating and documenting the history of the club. Because there's a lot of these fans, like kind of myself, probably all 3 of us, that won't know history going way back. We won't know everything, but it'd be really nice to educate kids that have just started, that have maybe only seen from sort of 2017 onwards. Because I'm sure we've had a lot of new fans coming at that point, but educating them around sort of even just kind of the 86 team. A lot of kids won't really understand, or kind of, understand sort of probably their parents' fascination with how good that 86 team is or was.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about the current crop of kind of fans coming through. Obviously, we chat to a lot of the lads who are kind of 18, 19, who are just kind of watching now. How many of them, they might be aware of it, but how many of them know just how important Malcolm really was to the sport of rugby league, for example?
Not many. They won't.
It's insane, really. The fact, obviously, he was countless hundreds of games coaching and playing for Cass, went over to the NRL, was just as successful, coached Great Britain, played for Great Britain. Just one of, genuinely, if anyone was going to be mentioned Immortals, if there was ever going to be a British inductee into the Australian Immortals, which they'll never do, but if they ever did, it'd probably Malcolm Reilly, who's, and how many of our fans know that he was very much our player and our coach. That's something that I think the club needs to do a job on. I think it's not easy. Don't get me wrong, because obviously people don't necessarily want to sit down in interviews, and it can be a little bit dry sometimes, things like that. But there's ways and means to do it, and I think the club need to really kind of celebrate an unbelievable history that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, and you could bring the two things together, couldn't you, with shirt design? In that, if we did promote the Hall of Fame, and I'm pretty sure there is one, because there are plant pots in Castown Centre, aren't there, that have sure they're the Hall of Fame. I don't think they are literally the Hall of Fame, but I'm sure they've got the names on of the players who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. But if you sublimated the names of the Hall of Fame players into the centenary shirt, there's your raising awareness.
Yeah, 100%. Because again, you're going to sell countless shirts if you've got a 12-year-old going, "Who's that?" Straight away, the dad, the granddad, the great granddad can tell them. You know what I mean? And that's what it's all about, isn't it? I think that's a great idea, the sublimation into the shirt. And I know we discussed about it, whether it be the original 1926 team or something like that, but I think it should be the legends. I think it should be the real legends, the people who really kind of made a mark for the club. Coaches as well, throw coaches on there by all means. But yeah, I think that'd be beautiful for a centenary shirt, and I'm sure we'll chat before then. Well, we certainly will chat before then. Before we get to 2026, that's for sure. And hopefully you're involved. Hopefully you will be involved in that process, because clearly,
fingers crossed. Yeah.
Clearly,
I mean,
you're very safe.
Oxen's contract is quite long, I think. So hopefully that relationship will stand the test of time, and I'll be involved for as long as Oxen are, and then hopefully be able to make those relationships. Should we ever?
You'll be free agent then. Be a free agent.
Start selling myself out to other clubs.
Well, we're very glad you do. We're very glad you do. We're going to leave it there. I think Stevie's going to stay with us because we are going to do the third episode of My 13, which is very exciting. And actually, thinking about it, you've probably already heard that because this is going out afterwards. So we've used a little bit of time travel. But yeah, this has been a brilliant episode. I absolutely loved it. Thank you to the club once again for giving us a little sneak peek of the away kit in order for us to record this episode for you and get it out nice and quickly off the back of the announcement. I hope you like it. It's certainly one that's grown on me. I liked it anyway initially. I kind of love it, to be honest. It's kind of grown on me after a few days, and I think it's going to be an absolute cracker and is going to look fantastic on the field. I think, as will the home kit. Steve, an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure to be here.
Adam, you're always here.
Always great to be here. I love talking cast, so I'm always here when there's talk about the Tigers.
Absolutely. Hope you've all enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Coif.